ॐ अवताराण्यनेकानि ह्यजस्य परमात्मनः जीवानां कर्मफलदो ग्रहरूपी जनार्दनः दैत्यानां बलनाशाय देवानां बलवृद्धये धर्मसंस्थापनार्थाय ग्रहाज्जाता शुभाक्रमात्.
This section is on the planets, grahas, chapter 3, page 53. The word graha is the word we use for planet in Vedic astrology. Now, graha means to grab, to seize, to control. The planet, and this has many different meanings. The planet can grab your mind and make you think something. It can grab your body and make you do something. We always say, why did I do that? Whenever we do something we didn't really want to do. And it's just like, at the moment carried you into that action. What was it in that moment that carried you into the action? It's the graha. The grahas are carrying you into these certain actions. Sometimes you realize that it wasn't, you become aware that you really weren't in control of that situation. It just kind of like, you got guided into it. Other times you think you are actually controlling the situation. Neither one is really correct. It's all just happening. Whether you think you're controlling it or you're not controlling it, it's all just karma unfolding. So in this way, the grahas are seizing us and grabbing us and moving us almost. And those grahas are only representing our own karma, moving us and guiding us. The English word planet comes from the Greek word that means wanderer. And so it's that which is just wandering through the sky. Very different conceptual reality. And the word planet does not include the sun and the moon. Where the word graha includes the sun and the moon as well as Rahu and Ketu. Because these are all factors that graha us. That are all affecting us and guiding us and making us make our choices. Influencing our reality. So, on page 53, there is verse 3 and 4 out of the second chapter of Parashara, which is talking about what are the grahas? Where'd they come from? What is their purpose? Parashara has to tell us this. His first chapter, he gives us the creation, which I'll be talking about the first chapter in volume 2 of this book. The second chapter goes into where are these planets coming from. And Parashara says that there are many incarnations of the unborn spirit. That unborn spirit, that which is unborn and supreme, it incarnates many times in many different forms. And he says that this unborn spirit, and he calls it Janardana Vishnu. It takes the form of the 9 grahas to give living beings the results of their karma. He's right there giving us, Parashara is just being very clear. Vishnu incarnated as the planets to deal out the karma for living beings. Verse 4, there's a slight analogy here. And he says, to destroy the strength of the demons and increase the power of the devas, he took birth as the splendorous grahas to sustain dharma. So there's a lot hidden in this verse. At the level of mythology, many of the Vishnu stories are all about demons getting out of control, taking over the world, starting wars and using all the money to be in wars and not supporting the social benefit of the people. And so Vishnu incarnates to remove these demons, to remove the negativity. So that's the mythological side of this verse. The deeper meaning to us, though, is that the asuras represent our negative tendencies, the bad things we do, our bad desires, where the devas represent our good thoughts and our good actions. So in this way, when you do negative things, you create a negative karma, which is revealed in the combination of the planets, and you get negative things happening back to you. Sometimes next week, sometimes next year, sometimes next life. Different karma has different situations depending on what the planets are doing. The increase the power of the devas is representing that the better your thoughts are, the more good things you're doing, good things are coming back to you, giving you benefit. So increasing the devas, good things are coming, you in turn keep doing even better good things. You do bad things and bad things are happening. If we look if we look to the ground and we're not looking at the big picture of just this moment, and we say, well, I can kill this person here and nothing happens to me now, then it's really the small scope. But when we look at the big picture and we look not just at just this life, but look at the multiple lives that we've had before this one, the multiple lives that we're going to have in the future. Some people think that this is my last life. It's a very escapist viewpoint. Very rarely do you see people who are actually at that level. Most people are reincarnating and reincarnating and reincarnating. If you're attached to not reincarnating, it's just as bad as being attached to incarnating. Our most important goal is just to live and live proper. Live in Dharma and to liberate our minds and to become less attached. Not attached to getting out or attached to being in. But in this way, if you kill somebody, it might not be till the next life or the life after that all of a sudden somebody kills you. Or recently I saw a chart. The indication, it was a guy, he was in his early 30s, and he had prostate cancer that had gone to his bones. In the chart, what it looked like, I gave him some remedies, hopefully they can help him. But the indications in the chart was he had about a year to live. And he's only in his 30s. But in the chart, it indicated that in a past life, due to money-related issues, he killed somebody. He shortened the life of somebody in his past life. In this life, even though he's doing good now, and many good things, his life is getting shortened. The karma comes back. And the planets are indicating that in the chart. So nothing goes unrectified. Everything is fair. Today I also saw a woman who, her mother, I looked at her chart, I said, you had a really harsh mother. She said, yes, it was terrible. She actually moved out of home when she was 16. It was so intense. But yet at the same time, she's undergoing a lot of suffering right now in her 50s because her mother's sick. And she's there taking care of her mother every day. She could easily say, my mother didn't take good care of me. Why should I take care of her? Let her die. But instead, she lets go and says, maybe she didn't take care of me, but the right thing is for me to be here taking care of her when she's sick. So that ability to transcend that cycle, she could just not care about her mother, let her mother suffer and die, and in her next life she's stuck with the same situation. Again, a negative story around the mother. The karma continues. Instead, she has been unattached to that past. She knows the right thing. She knows that Dharma is to take care of your sick mother. And so she's taking care of her sick mother. And she recently came and I looked at her chart, saw her problems, and gave her the remedies. She was so happy to get these remedies. But the remedies are coming because of all this good karma that she's creating right now. So she's getting a little bit of the good karma now, but the real good karma is going to come next life because of what she's doing. So in this way, we have cycles of karma. And if we are dense and tamas in our own minds, we get stuck in that karma. And it keeps repeating, and it's an endless cycle. when we move above that karma and do the right thing, take the path of the devas, we begin to transcend karma and break the cycles of karma. But bottom line is, the planets are indicating all this. And by indicating it, they are ensuring that the law of karma is working properly. Vishnu is considered the sustainer. What would be this universe if we didn't have Dharma sustaining it? If people could go out and kill each other and nothing would happen to them, there'd be no real Dharma. So through the planets, through the law of karma created by the planets, everything is fair. And in that fairness, Dharma is sustained. The first element, or the densest element, I should say, is the earth element. Prithvi. And this is connected to the planet Mercury. Now, earth gives form. All the other elements, fire doesn't have form, it's moving, it's changing. Air doesn't have form. Water takes the form of whatever you put it in. But what do you put it in? You put it in something that's earth. So earth is giving form. It's giving shape. It's the final end creation. It's physical creation. It's connected to the creator. Physical things are needed to survive. You need food to eat, to sustain your physical body. In this way, the earth element is connected with money. You don't see people when they're... the base element of money is gold and silver. It's physical elements. You don't see people trading liquids or gases. They're trading earth. I mean, there's all kinds of weird things, but in general, it's earth-based. So earth is connected to money. At the same time, what do we do to make money? We have careers. So the earth element is connected to work as well as money. So Mercury is a planet connected to career, connected to money, connected to form, connected to creation of products. Our next element is water. And water, which is called Jala, is connected to Venus. And water sustains us. It's where there's no water, you don't see life. So water becomes very important for life to live, for sustenance. Water is flowing. Water gives us relationship, that flowing element. It gives us sensuality and sexuality. It gives us reproduction. When something is juicy, it tastes good. So that water element, it's giving us the taste. You can have just a physical form, but when there's water there, it becomes voluptuous. It takes on round and flowing form. Similar to Venus. Venus is voluptuous. It has the curves that are beautiful. Water is also rejuvenating. Water makes things grow. So Venus is very important for proper growth and rejuvenation. Water is cleansing. Water cleans things. You can't clean things with earth. And fire, it purifies things, but you can't say it cleans. Water is cooling. It regulates temperature. So just a base general conceptual level of water. Water is, that flowing nature of water is young. If you look at a young sapling, it can bend. It's very subtle. When you look at a big older tree, it doesn't move as much. When you look at a dry, dead branch, if you bend it, it cracks and breaks. There's no water to it anymore. It's all dried out. So that water keeps it young, fresh, and alive. And this is Venus. Venus keeps that vitality in us, gives us our immune system, gives us the energy, the flow, and gives us our sense of sensuality and sexuality, the ability to reproduce and give life. Our next element is fire, Agni, which is connected to Mars. And fire is transforming. You throw something in the fire, it doesn't come out the same. At some point of heat, it changes. Fire gives digestion. It turns food into energy. It animates things. It makes them move. Without that energy created by the fire, what's moving? Where's the energy going to come from? It's a general, both on the external level of ordering things around, as well as on the internal level of our health. That digestion is making things work. It's in charge of how things are working. Those who know some Ayurveda know the importance of digestion in overall health. Fire gives us light, sight. It allows us to see. Fire gives us discipline, as well as celibacy. Fire and water are very different. Water gives us sexuality, where fire gives us celibacy. By being sexual, it creates and increases the water and flowy nature. By being celibate, it's tapasya. It increases heat and fire within us, increases discipline. Fire also gives anger and frustration when out of balance. It gives irritation. On a physical level, it can give inflammation, boils. At the same time, it's fire which gives us alchemy, which gives us the ability to transform things, to make some of the most powerful medicines possible. In that way, Mars is considered an alchemist, because traditionally alchemists are working in the fire, transforming with heat, transforming elements. Okay. Our next element is air, Vayu, and is connected to Saturn. Air is separating. It creates distance. It blows things apart. When things dry up, they don't stick together. Glue has moisture to it. Without that moisture, it's not sticking. So that air, that dryness is separating. That dryness creates differences. That moisture is friendly. Dryness and harshness is not friendly. There's a harder line. Air creates decreasing, waning, depleting. It's connected to Rudra, the destroyer. That twig that was with enough water could bend and was young and healthy and fresh. When that branch from the tree breaks off and is dry, it breaks. So that dryness is connected to old age and aging. Saturn is connected to old age and aging. There's a Sanskrit word in Ayurveda called Vata. And Vata is that which causes most health disorders, as well as aging. And this is connected to Saturn. So that Vata is disease. And so air, especially too much, causes disease. Causes a lack of groundedness. It separates us from the earth and water that is our body and the health inside of it. Our final fifth element is space. Akasha. Now space, it's everywhere. It's absolutely abundant. There's so much space. If we even go to an atom and break it down and look at the protons and neutrons and electrons, the amount of space that's actually matter versus empty space, there's way more empty space. So space is abundant, both at the molecular level all the way to the cosmic universal level. Everything is in it. Space is connected to our soul. Space, proper space, creates harmony. When people get too close and don't have enough space, they get agitated. When there's good space, people are happy. The word for happy and happiness in Sanskrit is sukha. Su means good, and ka means space. So good space is happiness. So the space element becomes very important for harmony. The space element is also connected to hearing. And in that way, we hear the teachings. A transmission of a lineage is by hearing the guru giving the teachings. So space is also connected to lineage and tradition of a lineage.
And which planet is that associated with?
Jupiter. Jupiter is the lineage coming down. Now there's traditionalism, which is a little different than tradition. Traditionalism, which is constricting and limiting, is connected to the air element and Saturn. A tradition, which is opening your mind and expanding you, is connected to Jupiter. Different kind of reality. There's the tradition where people do something just because that's how it's done. There's no thought process. There's no expansion as part of it. That's the tradition of Saturn. Where when you learn knowledge and you're being through the hearing, you're getting the transmission, which is expanding the mind. This is Jupiter, space. That abundance and expansion. Space is also connected to what we call pratibha. And pratibha, the best translation of that, I guess there's really no 100% translation, but is intuition. So intuition is the space element. That ability to get to the level of abundance, of spaciousness, where your consciousness is everywhere, is aware of everything, is space. So space is not just the field that everything is existing in. It's also the qualitative nature of the field everything is existing in. So when we have a very beneficial Jupiter, that space is good. It brings contentment into the life. When that space that everything is existing in is not harmonious, we have dissatisfaction. All this is space. So those were the 5 elements. And next we have the 3 gunas. And as we go through this book, we're going to see that there's a very heavy emphasis on understanding those 5 elements and the three gunas and their interaction. Root foundation. The more we understand those 5 elements, the more we understand the gunas, the better our Jyotish will be. Therefore, what I've given here is an introduction. But be it through other Jyotish texts, and especially Ayurvedic texts, the understanding of these gunas and elements should be studied to no end. To no end. We can't study them enough. Even astrologers who've been practicing for 20, 30 years still are understanding these basic foundations deeper every day through their practice. You don't just get it and that's the end of the story. This is the foundation that needs to continually be getting stronger. Like the roots of a tree just don't grow and then the tree grows up. As the tree is getting bigger, the roots are also going down deeper and getting bigger. So as your Jyotish grows, this foundation also has to be growing, or else it's going to be like a tree that just falls over very easily in the wind. So the gunas. The gunas are influencing the mind. The gunas are qualitative states of nature. Qualitative. Can I touch a guna? No. It's like an adjective. It's a quality. And there's 3 gunas: Rajas, Tamas, and Sattva. So everything can be classified relative to one of these gunas. Some things are easier to classify than others, as the gunas are relative. Because as an adjective, when we say something is fast, fast for a turtle is different than fast for a rabbit. Hot for somebody who lives along the equator is different than hot for somebody who lives in Canada. As the same way cold is different to those 2 people. So the gunas have a level of relativity. They're qualities that we have to understand. Tamas is the most dense. Rajas is basically the opposite of tamas. It's fast, moving, creative. Sattva is the in-between balance of the 2. Anything that increases dullness, heaviness, or inertia is classified as tamas. Anything that increases greed, anxiousness, or distraction of the mind is classified as rajas. Now, for somebody who is very tamas, who has a very dull and thick consciousness, what can become sattva? What is balanced? What is bringing them into more balance? Can be much simpler than somebody who is in a very clear state of mind. Somebody in a very clear sattvic state of mind is the smallest little tamasic thing influences them very heavily. So at the end of tamas, as I said, these are relative. Sattva is anything that is in harmony, that brings harmony, that brings knowledge, understanding, or clarity. Tamas brings unclarity by the dullness and inertia, a laziness to think too far. Where Rajas brings ignorance based on being too greedy and not looking at how things really are, changing the situation to fit one's own purposes. On page 56, we have a small little graph of the gunas and the planets connected to them. Venus and Mercury are the Rajas planets. Sun, Moon, and Jupiter are the Sattva planets. Mars, Saturn, and the Chaya Grahas are the Tamas planets. So going back to my previous statement, Rajas is that which is creating greed, anxiety, restlessness. Venus and Mercury do this. Tamas is that which is creating dullness, inertia, lack of awareness. And there we have Mars and Saturn, as well as the nodes. Sattva is that which is bringing harmony, balance, proper regulation. And there we have the Sun, the Moon, and Jupiter. The Sun, the Moon, and Jupiter are that which brings harmony and health. They are that which have the power to remove tamas. Tamas is the real dangerous effect on our consciousness. To remove the tamas effects of Mars, we increase the effect of the moon. To remove the tamas effect of Saturn, we increase the power of the sun. To remove the tamas effect of the nodes, we increase the power of Jupiter. So those three sattva planets have the power to remove tamas, as well as balance the rajas. Looking at the rajas planets, we have Venus and Mercury. Now Venus was the water element. The water element, and Mercury was the earth element. And understanding the earth element, we realized that the earth gives us form, creates form, gives us money. So the rajas of Mercury relates to the rajas of business, the rajas of making money, of creating products, and things along that line. Where understanding that Venus is the water element, reproduction, sensuality, life and vitality. The rajas of Venus is the creation of other beings, living beings, sexuality, and the rajas that creates in us. The desires created by both. Where there's rajas, there's excess desires. Rajas always brings excess desire. Among the tamas planets, the ones that are physically manifest with the elements, we have Mars, which is the fire element, and Saturn, which is the air element. Mars burns things. One word that can be connected with Mars is break. Mars breaks things. Saturn is like the air that ages things. So tamas destroys. But Saturn is more focused on destroying living things, where Mars is more focused on destroying the non-living things. But both are the tamas element. The nodes, they destroy the sun and the moon, the mind and the soul. They bring disturbance to that area. The sattva planets, Sun, Moon, and Jupiter. The Sun ensures that we have the resources that we need in our life. A hungry man is a dangerous man. A poor person is more likely to rob somebody than somebody who has enough. The sun ensures that there's enough resources. The moon ensures that we continue to use those resources properly so that we have enough. It supports regulates, nourishes. And Jupiter is the intelligence that allows us to use what we have, to apply ourselves in a healthy way, to bring balance and harmony in our life. It's that space element that is the key to bringing that harmony into our reality. So the mind, the soul, and the space element are giving us that sattva of the planets. So we can see how we understood the 5 elements, and then we differentiate slightly those planets through the gunas. And now we're going to slightly differentiate them a little bit more, still using these general significations. There is something called Varna, or caste of the planets. We see the graph on page 56, where Jupiter and Venus are the Brahmins. Sun and Mars are the Kshatriya, which are the warriors, where the Brahmins are the learned class, the teachers and the priests. The Kshatriyas are the politicians and the warriors, the soldiers, that whole aspect of society. The Vaishyas are merchants and people who are working with money and buying and selling. And that's connected to the moon and Mercury. And then you have Shudras, which are the menial jobs and hands-on jobs. Jobs that require the hands to be used, or, hard labor to be used. Now we see that of the Brahmins, the teacher and priest caste, or class, or strata of society. No hard fixed, you're born into it or not. Just, it's a strata of society. Are connected to Jupiter and Venus. Now Jupiter is a sattvic planet, where Venus is a rajas planet. So of that caste, we have a sattvic aspect, where it's a priest who actually wants to benefit society. Or a teacher who's teaching so that people get education. At the same time, we have Venus, but Venus is Rajas. And Rajas is disturbed by greed, anxiousness, wanting. There's excess desires there. So that's the priest who's trying to get all the money out of you. It's the priest who goes on TV and spends 45 minutes talking about how you should donate your money and about 15 minutes about God and any type of spirituality. That's more the Venus level. The teacher who's only teaching because they need a job. So we have 2 different levels so we can see how the gunas are changing the way that Brahmin strata is manifesting. At the same time, when we go to the Kshatriya, what literally translates as warrior caste, we have the Sun and Mars. Sun is our sattvic planet. And in that way, the Sun gives us laws, rules, and regulations. So by keeping us in the realm of Dharma, things are kept under control. Where Mars is tamas. And Mars rules police. It rules soldiers. So when things can't stay in line, the tamas goes out and breaks it. No one enjoys being arrested and going to jail. No one enjoys even getting a ticket. It's tamas. It's heavy. You get that ticket, you get pulled over for speeding. When a war happens, it's a very heavy energy. That's the tamas of Mars. Both are kshatriya. They're keeping society healthy, happy, and in line with Dharma. But one is doing it through a sattvic means, and one is doing it through the tamas approach. A strata of society. Then we have the Vaishyas. Vaishyas are the merchants, or the exchange of services for money. We have Mercury, which is the Rajas. Rajas, excess desires, greed. It's just pure business. Buy, sell, trade, stock market, let's move faster, quick. What kind of advertisements can we move to sell this faster? Where Moon is sattvic. It's a little bit more social services. making sure that things that are needed for society are getting out there, and charging what is appropriate. Mercury charges as much as is feasible. The more the demand, it just rings that price up higher. It's Rajas. Where the moon ensures that everybody has the ability to pay for the service because it's needed. Sets up clinics where poor people can get the proper things as well. So in this way, we have the Rajas and Sattva coming through this strata of society, through these planets. Then we have the Shudras, and they're both are Tamas Grahas. But if we want to get nitty-gritty, we can see Saturn is showing a little bit more skilled craftsmen. Those like a carpenter or a mason who has the ability to, who they're working with their hands, but it's a skilled craft. Where when we go to the nodes, they're just foreign labor. Don't even know the language, they're just there to haul buckets of dirt or shovel this from A to B. So as we go through these different groupings, as you begin studying the planets, you'll see they're divided into this group, they're divided into that group, they're divided into this. They have this signification here and this over there. We have to integrate all these different groups and all these different classifications and meditate upon them. Begin to understand how they work. Begin to understand these archetypal energies better. The more we understand these archetypal realities, the better our Jyotish is. And I've repeated that multiple times, and I can't repeat it enough. We're on page 57 now, and we're going to talk about natural significations. Nasargika Karaka. As we understood in this beginning little introduction, there's groupings, and the planets go into these groupings and categories. And I did my best to try and understand how you can cognize that reality. Now we're going to go into this concept of Naisargika Karaka, which Naisargika means natural, Karaka means signification. The natural doers. What is just the natural energy of that planet? What it naturally represents. For example, the Jupiter shows intelligence. If Jupiter is strong, the person has more intelligence. If Jupiter is weak, the person has less intelligence. Venus shows love life. If Venus is strong, the person has a very healthy love life. If Venus is afflicted, the person has lots of problems in their love life. Very clear, simple, natural significations of the planets. Understanding how these signification works can at first be sometimes a little difficult, because everything has a signification. For example, trees are ruled by Mercury, yet the wood that a carpenter uses is ruled by Jupiter. But the action of building a house is done by a carpenter who's ruled by Saturn. But the framework of the house, that framing that's done in the beginning, is connected to the sun. The sun is Karaka for skeletal system in a human. In the same way, it's Karaka for the skeleton of the house, the frame of the house. The finished house is connected to Ch.3. Ch.3 is the signification of a home, of a house, of a structure that you live in, where the land that the house is built on is significated by Mars, while the feng shui, or the vastu, of the home and the land is significated by Saturn. So all these different significations, ruling all these different aspects. I said in the beginning that trees are connected to Mercury. Yet, if we look in a forest, there's all kinds of trees. And relative, Mercury is just the primary significator. There's sub or secondary significations because fruiting trees are connected to Jupiter. Fruitless trees are connected to Mercury. Thorny trees are connected to Mars. Decorative trees with flowers and things of that nature are connected to Venus. Barren trees are connected to Saturn. Barren or worthless trees. Trees you just want to cut out and remove.
What about trees that are like deciduous, they lose all their leaves?
Depends on primarily Mercury. If they don't have any fruit or anything like that, then Mercury. As we'll learn later, Mercury is connected to the seasons. And so those trees that are very seasonal, it's all mercurial based. The color of Mercury, as we learned, is also connected to earth tones. Greens and the color of leaves and bark and things of that nature. So, all these things are significated by the planets. Anything that exists has a planet that significates it. One of the homeworks that I talked about in the first chapter, the first lesson, was getting a notebook and making a section in that notebook for each of the planets. And each day that's connected to each of those planets, doing a little research on that planet as an upaya, as a practice, as a remedy for yourself to tap into that vibration, to learn about that planet, and begin researching different books, different sources, getting different opinions about what people believe the significations are. As you begin to research, you'll see that not everybody agrees about every signification. And that's why I stress that we do our research and we see what people think. But more important than just the straight signification is understanding the energy of that planet. We understood the sattvic level of Jupiter, the intelligence connected to Jupiter. In that way, Jupiter is connected to gold. It's that high vibration. Little things, when you begin to understand the energy of them, you can connect it to the planet by logic. A little bit of intuition and a whole lot of logic. Things begin to make sense because as you do your research, you're not just trying to memorize huge lists. You're trying to get the concept, get the feeling of that planet. We're going to go through, I'm going to just do 4 planets. I'm going to do the Sun, the Moon, Rahu, and Ketu. The other planets you'll have to read on your own. But I'm going to try and show more the energy of that planet so that we can, when we look at the significations of it, we can understand from a conceptual point of view. Parashara describes the Sun as having sweet brown colored eyes, having a square figure, a fiery or pitta constitution, being Dhiman, intelligent, being masculine, and tending towards baldness. All very simple significations, but all, as we begin to get deeper into Jyotish, have a very powerful impact on how we practice. When a person has light brown eyes, we know that the sun is influencing their ascendant. When the sun is influencing the ascendant, the person will tend to bald early. That sun, it's giving a square figure. The fiery constitution is both Mars and Sun. Where Mars, even though it's fiery, it has a very thin waist and wide shoulders. But the Sun, it doesn't have that kind of triangle shape. It has that square shape. So it's a straight line. It doesn't have the curves that excess water gives us. yet it's not skinny like the fire of Mars. In this way, we can utilize this in our practice. The sun gives light to this planet and thereby gives energy. All forms of energy at some level are coming from the sun. Coal and oil. Could they be possible without the sun? Thousands of years ago, creating the matter that needed to be in the earth to develop those fossil fuels. The sun was needed. So those are just stored sun energy. The wind, making things move on the earth, wind is being created by the change of temperature. The change of temperature is occurring because of the sun. So the sun is creating all energy. Thereby the sun is that which gives us energy. A seed can't grow without light. So that initial spark of life is coming from the sun. The sun, not only is it giving that spark of life to the sprout to grow, but when you start a business, it gives the spark of energy and resources to that business. When you start a relationship, it gives the spark of light and energy to that relationship. It gives that initial resource or light or what energy that is needed to begin things. The sun represents the soul. Soul is often connected to the analogy of a spark. So that spark that creates our whole being, the manas, the mind, first goes in and connects to the soul. And then that manas and soul, that mind and soul, take a birth in a physical body. So that initial spark of life even existing is related to the soul, which is connected to the sun. The soul is that which is guiding us. It's that true light in us that's guiding us through life. The sun represents that which is guiding. The sun represents position, status, respect, and rulership. That soul within us is what's ruling the direction we're taking in life. Where that sun on an external society level is connected to the king, ruling the direction that society is going. Can we understand the energetic relationship between that source of energy, that spark starting, that spark guiding us, that rulership energy of the sun? So that sun being the soul that's guiding us, it's that true reality that is in us, that is making us exist, where the mind is more a reflection. It's connected to the moon, so it's the reflection of the sun. It's not the true light. It's that which is transitory, where the sun is showing us that which is that which is intransitory, that which is existing, that which is true. It's showing us that which is real, and in that way, representing that which is real, representing that which is our soul, it is the significator of spirituality. The strength and the placement of the sun in the chart shows a person's spirituality. At the same time, the soul is what is making us exist in this physical world. You have souls without bodies, but you don't have bodies without souls. When the soul leaves, the body dies. In that way, when the soul is not happy, disease happens. And it's more at an advanced level. But we see this from, actually I won't go into that. But at a certain level, we can look at the soul in a chart and see if the disease is coming from some past karma, or if the disease is being based that the soul is just not happy. It's not doing what it's supposed to be doing, and thereby creating disease. two different causes of disease coming into the life. So that sun, being that which is giving us life, also represents the health and vitality of our body. So the sun is also a significator for health. Since the sun gives light and sattva, it burns up the toxins in the body, removes the toxins that create sickness. It's the tamas grahas that bring toxins into the body. And it's the sattva of the sun that burns up and removes those toxins. At the same time, on an energetic level, it's the sun that burns up our negative karmas, that burns up our bad actions that are created by those tamas grahas. It's those tamas grahas that give us bad karma. By strengthening that sun, we burn up that bad karma that we created. In that way, by doing mantras like the Gayatri mantra, we strengthen the sun and we burn up our bad karma. Saturn is the planet who significates sin and toxins. So on a physical level, he brings toxins into the body. On an energetic level, he shows the bad karma we've done. As I said earlier, if you want to remove the tamas of Saturn, you strengthen the sun. So by remedies like Gayatri mantra, we burn up that tamas of Saturn. Not too long ago, I recommended Gayatri to somebody who had Saturn in the ascendant. I told him, you need to burn up some of the tamas in your life. He started doing the Gayatri mantra. A few weeks later, he says, hey, I'm still not that different. We can't just burn up lifetimes of karma in a few weeks. It takes a little bit of time.
Give him a year.
About a year. But what I replied to him was, I said, but you've noticed a little bit more clarity in your thoughts, haven't you? Because it does work a little bit. It's not going to explode and the tamas goes away 100%. It goes away a little, like the covering of an onion, a little bit at a time. It slowly changes. It's not a knife that just cuts the onion in half. But so that sun removes the tamas. Now the sun as a significator of health. When we think about the sun, when you begin to understand the astronomical level of the planets, the sun is the most regular planet. At any given point in time, relative to the date of year, you know where the sun is. The sun, it rises every morning, sets every night. It's regular. It's connected to routine. And those who understand Ayurveda understand that a regular routine balances Vata, the air element which causes most disease. The air element connected to Saturn. So that sun and strengthening it, and by one of the ways we can strengthen it is by increasing a regular routine in our life. One way is to do a Gayatri mantra. One way is to do routine. Both increase the energy of the sun. So all the significations of the sun, the more we bring them into our life, the stronger the sun becomes to us. In that way, the way a gemstone works is a gemstone like a ruby is connected to the sun. By wearing that, we're bringing more sun vibration into our life. But at the same time, we can just bring more routine into our life. Bring more spirituality into our life. Bring a little bit more respect and honor into our life. And thereby we're bringing more solar energy into our life. The sun is often shown with 7 horses guiding its chariot. Those 7 horses relate to the 7 chanda. The chandas that we were talking about last class in Chapter 2. The Vedic foundations, the meters, which are the rhythms. And that rhythm, it's the same as that routine, that sun is rhythmic. Just like the beat of our heart is rhythmic. So the sun is connected to our heart and our heart beating. It's that rhythm. It's the circulation, that pulsing of the universe, of that regularity, that regulating factor. The sun, those 7 horses, are also connected to the 7 colors that white light breaks into. In that way, the color connected to the sun is bright colors. So to bring more solar energy into your life, you're not going to be wearing black or dark colors, but you wear lighter colors, more vibrant colors. And that brings more solar energy into a person's aura. If we look on page 60 at the medical significations, Asti Dhatu, and Asti Dhatu, I should have put a better translation there, is connected to the skeletal system. The skeleton is that which gives the support of the body. It's that which gives structure. It maintains the dharma, the right position of the body. Sun is also connected to the head. The head is like the king of our body. You cut off the head, we know it's the king. Very important. Sun is connected to circulation and the heart. It's that rhythm, that which is regulating. So the sun is also connected to our vitality relative to health. So understanding these significations and meditating upon the energy of the sun and researching and understand all the various significations of the sun, we begin to merge with its energy and understand its effects. That way, when we look at a chart and we see the sun as strong, we understand what's good in the person's life. When we look at a chart and see that the sun is weak, we understand what the problems in the person's life is. So the better we understand these significations and merge into the energy, we'll be able to understand what's unfolding in the life. The moon, Chandra. Parashara describes the moon as being Vata Kapha constitution, and this means that it has a more of a large body in general. Kapha constitution is wider bone, more broad. What we generally think of as a motherly figure. The moon is wise, prajna. It has prajna, the moon, where the sun was Dhiman, that who has intelligence. The moon is prajna. It has more of a wisdom and understanding. A little bit different than this one who has both are understanding, but a slightly different vibration between the masculine and feminine understanding. The moon has good intuition. The moon has sweet speech, is changeable, fickle-minded, and is a hopeless romantic. Hopeless romantic. The moon is a hopeless romantic. Very emotional. Emotions are connected to the moon. Now, from our vantage point, even though the moon is much smaller than the sun, when we look in the sky, because the sun is so far away and the moon is so close, they look the same. They look exactly the same. So they represent the yin-yang balance of the masculine and the feminine energy. Where the sun is connected to the father, the moon significates the mother. The sun is the daymaker, dinakara. The moon is the ratrikara, the night maker. The sun provides the resources, and the moon is sustaining them and utilizing them. When we get into financial astrology and we look at what's called the Hora chart, the sun shows the supply, the moon shows demand. And so there's a constant interaction between the sun and the moon. The moon represents the mother, and the mother is on a healthy mother. The archetype of mother is nurturing, caring, providing, and supporting. Of course, in the chart, when the moon is afflicted, there becomes situations where the mother isn't doing everything she's supposed to because the moon is afflicted. But when the moon is very beneficial, then the mother is exactly like the archetypal aspect is supposed to be. Combinations with the moon, planetary combinations, will show what the mother is like in a person's life. Where the moon is placed shows the presence, how present the mother is in your life and the relationship to her. We can have a mother who's a very good mother that we don't have a good connection to, or a mother who is very negative, who has many issues of her own that we are very connected to. So planets with the moon will give us the quality of the mother, where the position of the moon is going to show us our relationship to that mother. Among other factors. I'm being very general for the beginning understanding. But that's the basic reality. Now, in general, as the sun represents Dharma, the Dharma comes from our father. Whereas the moon represents the mother, it also represents our mind. So the condition of the mother is also represented in our psychological makeup. How we think and perceive the world is connected to our mother. Because the moon is showing both. It's the fractal of reality. When the moon is with Saturn, it creates a mother who's very harsh. A mother who's very strict. At the same time, when the moon is with Saturn, it shows somebody who has a very pessimistic outlook on life. Where if the moon is with Jupiter, Jupiter is the harmony. It's the Akash, the abundantness. So the mother is giving very much. At the same time, when moon is with Jupiter, it shows somebody who's a very big optimist. Sometimes even excessively optimistic. Because of that Akash, that space, so much. So we see there's a direct connection between that moon and the condition of our mother and the condition of our minds. The moon also represents family, very close immediate family, as well as community in general. It's the social planet. It shows the social network. How social a person is going to be directly related to the condition of the moon. Now, as the sun was very regular, you know exactly where it is when it is. The moon, it's changing phases all the time, rises differently all the time. Different times of the year, it's moving through different signs. The full moon is in a different sign all the time. In this way, and not only does it change, but it changes quickly. So this shows the mind is very fickle and changeable. When we hold something in our soul, it might be something, we might have had it when we were 7 years old, and at 60, we're still carrying it. It's just regular, it's in us, it's deep. But thoughts, we have 1 minute, a few seconds later we have a different thought. We can change our mind very quickly. Very important to differentiate that level of our reality. People who do meditation have a deeper awareness of the difference between what is coming from their mind and what is coming from their deeper soul level. But so that moon is fickle, changing quickly. And the moon also relates to prana, because the prana is that which nourishes us, keeps us alive. And prana is also directly connected to the mind. Those who study yoga know this very deeply. Those who have studied some pranayama philosophy understand this very intensely, because the faster the breath, the faster the thoughts are moving. The slower the breath, the slower the thoughts are moving. Different emotions are invoking a different quality of breath. Somebody who's in a fight or flight, fear state is breathing very rapidly. Somebody who's very peaceful and relaxed is breathing very slowly. So the condition of our breath affects our mind, and our mind affects our breath. They are interrelated. One is not directly controlling the other. They are both influencing each other because they're connected. Thereby, yogis control the breath with pranayama, slow the breath down, and create a certain rhythm. And that rhythm creates a certain mental state that they are aiming to achieve. So, that prana and the emotions and how the emotions affect the prana, it's all connected to the moon. Now, the mind, it processes information, but the information it processes comes in through the five senses. Now, that sensory digestion, it takes energy. In that way, when we need to rejuvenate the mind, strengthen the mind, what we do is we stop digesting sensory information. And how do we do that? But it's in yoga, it's called pratyahara. We stop the senses, we block them off. We plug up our ears, shut our eyes, and turn our senses inside. Many different yogic techniques to create pratyahara, to bring the senses inward. And by bringing them inward, stopping that external use, that external digestion of sensory information, allows us to rejuvenate the mind, allows us to rejuvenate the moon.
Like sleep.
Like sleep. Sleep is the natural way to rejuvenate that manas. Pratyahara. Excess stimuli depletes the mind. And Rahu is a planet that rules excesses. Thereby, when Rahu is connected to the moon, there's an excess desires in the mind, there's excess thoughts that are scattered, confusion. In this way, pratyahara allows us to focus and rejuvenate the mind. So those 5 doorways are sometimes represented as 5 horses that pull the moon's chariot. Other times the moon is represented as being guided by deer. Gentle, because of the gentleness connected to the moon. The moon represents the home and shows how we are in the home, which is directly connected to our mental state. When they say home is where the heart is, they're talking about the emotional heart. Home is where the emotions are. So home is as the emotions are. When the moon is afflicted, a person has a hard time processing emotions and feelings. Where the soul, the sun, is steady and stable and gives a general state, the moon gives us all kinds of thoughts. And those thoughts can sometimes be very negative and put us into negative emotional states or positive emotional states. All this is transitory and quickly changing. Planets aspecting, conjunct, and positions of the moon reveal what are the thoughts going through a person's mind. What are the issues in a person's mind? What is the mind constantly thinking about? Is it healthy? Is it not healthy? And when we look at a chart, we look at how healthy is the moon, and if there are negative thought cycles, how can we mitigate those so that we can clear up the mind and bring more focus into the person's life. one way that we help direct the mind is through bhakti. Bhakti yoga. Bhakti yoga is directly connected to the manas and proper guidance of the mind, where jnana yoga is directly connected to the sun. It's pure atma perception. It's how the atma, how the soul perceives the world. Where bhakti is more moon-based. It's about making sure the thoughts are guiding us in the right direction, keeping them in the right direction. The highest level of bhakti is fully surrendering to the divine. Sometimes we meet people who aren't ready to fully surrender to the divine. And so the first level is to help them begin to direct the mind to the appropriate direction. And one of the ways we do that is to teach them about appreciation, to be thankful for the things in their life. If they can't fully tap into the bhakti and let the bhakti guide them, then we take a step down and make them appreciate what they actually have that they can see. Because bhakti, on some level, you can't see. You're worshiping some divine thing that can't even be seen. So some people aren't ready for that level yet. Just start with what's here. Let them be thankful for the roof that's over their head. Instead of sitting there complaining about the house they have, complaining about this, complaining about that, why complain? Be thankful that you at least have a lover in your life. Be thankful that you have food in your stomach. And guide the mind to this level of appreciation and thankfulness. And after the mind gets going during that direction, then it can be steered and uplifted to the level of bhakti and devotion. But it has to start somewhere. This is the mind, and it's one of the ways we begin to work with the mind. A little bit more I have here, but I'm not going to go too much into it because we don't have much time. So I'm not going to go into all the planets because it's written out here. My main intention is to give the energy of how we want to begin understanding these planets and how we're approaching them. But I am going to go a little bit into Rahu and Ketu, because for the average person, they're not the easiest thing to understand. We'll start with the mythological aspect of Rahu and Ketu, which we find on page 76. So, the mythology, there's a story of where the Devas realized that if they churned the ocean of milk, which is the Milky Way, that by churning it like milk is churned into butter, that they could extract out the nectar of immortality. But the Milky Way was so huge that they couldn't do it on their own. So they had to get all the demons, or asuras, to help them, and to pull back and forth to churn this ocean of milk, or the Milky Way, to bring out the nectar of immortality called Amrita. On a side note, the Milky Way and the ocean of milk represents our consciousness. And the churning of the consciousness represents the evolution of consciousness and the path of yoga. And the Devas and the Asuras are the right and left, are the demon and the angel on our right and left shoulder. We can't just, look at only what's good in the world and expect to grow. We have to look, there's good and there's bad in the world, and we have to really look at both and understand both and extremes of reality to create that growth in our consciousness. And this is what's represented by this story here, is that evolution and that working in consciousness. And from that, the Amrita, the nectar of immortality, arises, that true knowledge. When it arose, the mythology goes, all the demons said, there it is. They grabbed it and ran for it. And the Devas were without it. And so they went chasing after it. And Vishnu turned into a beautiful woman, the most beautiful woman that ever existed in the universe. And got in front of the demons and said, oh, you have the nectar. And all the demons, their tongues were hanging out. They were just like, totally enamored. They're demons, so you have a little temptation, and they were sold out right there. She said, why don't you give me the nectar and I'll distribute it fair to everybody equally. And so they just said, okay. They gave it to her. They were just enamored and lost in lust, so they just agreed. Now, this beautiful woman was actually Vishnu in disguise. And Vishnu only wanted to give the nectar of immortality to the devas, not to the demons. So he said, everybody line up. And he started giving the nectar just to the devas. And the demons were so enamored by the beauty that they didn't notice. But there was one demon that was a little smarter. His name was Swarbhanu. And he got in between in the line of devas. He got in between the sun and the moon. And Vishnu came and dropped the nectar. And just as a drop was falling down, the sun and the moon said, hey, wait a minute. That's not a deva. And so Vishnu realized it wasn't a deva, took out his discus and went to cut off the head of the demon. But just as he cut off the head of the demon, the drop of nectar fell in his mouth. So he became immortal at the moment of his head being separated from his body. So he became eternal, and yet eternally in two parts. So because he was eternal, what are they going to do with him? They threw him up in the sky with the sun and the moon. And so the head became Rahu, the body became Ketu. That's the mythology. There's a lot hidden in that. We'll only just touch and scratch the surface of that. But where Rahu is representing the head, he represents all the delusions of the mind, all the desires and material wants and needs, where Ketu, being a headless body, represents headless activities, which when Ketu is well placed, it is connected to the Sahaja state, or Zen beginner's mind, the state of just being, no mind, the state of no mind, just pure just beingness. When Ketu is not well placed, it shows schizophrenia. The mind is just not functioning properly. There's just headlessness there. It can also show fundamentalists, people that go with bombs and just blow themselves up on buses. It's just headless. What did they just accomplish? Just a mess is what they accomplished. This is Ketu, fundamentalism, headlessness. So there's a lot hidden, even deeper than this. If somebody who's listening, if you've had a background in Western astrology says that the Rahu and Ketu, or the North and South Node, are representing our past karma. Now, it doesn't exactly work in Vedic astrology, and maybe you might have heard a Vedic astrologer mention this, but they themselves have a Western background. Every planet is showing our past karma. Every planet is showing some type of desire based on some past action that we have done. So how can Rahu and Ketu show a past desire or past karma? They all are showing past karma. So we have to get a deeper understanding than just past karma. We have to understand that Rahu represents mental delusion and Ketu represents headlessness. And both are non-physical beings. Now, if we look slightly astronomical, we can see there's some diagrams on page 77. This top diagram is really important, and that's the only one we're going to cover on this audio. And if we look, there's the big circle, which is the dotted line around the sun. At the same time, we have this circle of the moon that's moving around the earth. Now, you can see that there's 2 points where that circle that's moving around the earth is coming into contact with the circle that's moving around the sun. You see those 2 points where it's coming into contact? That is the point where the earth and the sun are coming into alignment. That point where they're lining up is Rahu and Ketu. So it's a mathematical point that's out there in space. That's the astronomical perspective of Rahu and Ketu. There's a little bit more notes about mean nodes, and I recommend using mean nodes over true nodes, as mean nodes are the average calculation of those points. You take those points every day and you do the average of them. The moon is on a slight wobble, and that wobble creates an irregular motion of those mathematical points. Now, there's something called true nodes, and the true nodes shows that irregular calculation. But with true nodes, what sometimes happens, because of the wobble of the moon, is the nodes are going retrograde, direct, retrograde, direct. But with a mean node, where you just average it all together, the nodes are always moving backwards, opposite of all the other planets. And this is important to understand. And it's important to use the mean nodes because of that opposite motion. The nodes are always moving opposite. All the planets are following the same direction as the sun. They're all moving along the path of Dharma, where the nodes are moving backwards. They're against Dharma. They're not following Dharma. They're shadows. They're not following the light. Important note, most software, Vedic astrology software, has the choice of choosing whether you want mean node or true node in your options. For general use, you want to use mean nodes. There's one or two applications with Muhurta and Prashna where we are using true nodes to get specific exactness. But for natal astrology, we are using mean nodes. So going deeper into Rahu, Parashara tells us that Rahu is blue-bodied and he's Dhumrakara. Dhumra is smoke, Kara is doer. He's the doer of smoke. He's making smoke. He's the color of smoke. He's creating obscuration. Parashara tells us he lives in the forests. So what does lives in the forest means? It means tribal. Rahu is connected to tribal reality. For thousands of years there have been cities, city dwellers, and properness existing. For thousands of years there have been tribals who have pierced themselves and tattooed themselves and lived in a very different lifestyle than the proper city dwellers represented by the sun. So that tribal reality is connected to Rahu. Piercings, tattoos, that whole tribal look is connected to Rahu. Whether it is in a tribe in the middle of the forest or it's a tribal pierced person living in the city. Both are Rahu. We got to understand that signification, that energy. Parashara says Rahu invokes fear. He says Rahu is Dhiman, intelligent. See it right there? Intelligent. Dhiman, Rahu. And having a Vata, an airy constitution. So Rahu is skinny. He gives a skinniness to the body, a lankiness. In this way, Rahu is similar to Saturn. And he's similar to drying things. In general significations, Rahu is like Saturn. But to be more specific, the natural sorrow of life. It's natural. We all naturally grow old. And we all naturally die. That's Saturn. But Rahu shows the unnatural pain and suffering. Rahu shows unnatural death. When there's a shock, that's Rahu. Rahu rules shock. When Rahu's aspecting the moon, the person experiences shocks in their life, things that are just shocking to their emotions. Rahu shows the demented, dark side of life. He doesn't think clearly. There's a cloudiness. He's connected to addiction and substance abuse, dirtiness and impurity, poisons. If Rahu's with Venus, he creates a dirty sense of sexuality. If he's with Mercury, he shows a deceitful business sense. If he is with Jupiter, he shows a disrespect for life. So Rahu shows an imbalance in all the significations of the planets he conjoins. So it's much more than just Rahu shows past life karma. Everything shows past life karma. We have to understand the qualities of Rahu. On the beneficial side, Rahu gives the ability to work with chemicals and poisons. And sometimes poisons can be used to cure. Western medicine is very much based on Rahu medicine. Rahu gives the ability to work with metals and heavy machinery. He gives ability of foreign travel. And he's very good for business and politics. Because Rahu's connected to deceitfulness and lying. And politicians need to be deceitful and good at lying in these days and ages. So that's a general idea of Rahu. Ketu is the headless one, and he's like Mars, similar to Mars. But to really understand the difference between Mars and Ketu, Mars is Earth, where Ketu is a house. So the house is Ketu, the Earth is Mars. Understanding that deeper, the Earth is mud. And mud is baked into bricks. And those bricks make the house. So when the Earth is altered, it becomes like Ketu. In the same way, there's a story of Parvati, the wife of Shiva, taking mud, blowing life into it, and creating a sun. And that sun was Ganesh. Earth made into form, brought into life. Ketu is connected to Ganesh. So that changing, just like the earth is Mars, but when cooked and made into a brick, it makes a house, which is Ketu. In that same way, that the mother, Parvati, took the earth and made it into Ganesh. Ganesh is the doorkeeper. He lets you in or he keeps you out. Ketu is the same. Ketu represents doors and windows. The doorway. Ketu is connected to Kundalini, and Ganesh sits at the base of the spine guarding the Kundalini, which is the mother. Kundalini is the goddess within us. And those who know mythology know that Ganesh got his elephant head because he was guarding the doorway to his mother when Shiva came home. So all this mythology is very deeply embedded with tons of astrological stories. So Ketu has the ability to create obstacles or to remove them, just as Ganesh is the remover of obstacles or he who is putting the obstacles in our way. Ketu is connected, being that he has no head and he doesn't have a body, he's connected to disembodied beings, spirits and ghosts. Particularly when Ketu is connected to Saturn, he shows haunting by ghosts. To slightly differentiate, if we look at Rahu, Rahu is the path of Bhoga. Bhoga means material enjoyment, where Ketu is the path of yoga, which is spirituality. So Rahu and Ketu are extremes of each other. If you look at a chart, they are always in opposite houses, always 180 degrees apart. If we look on the diagram on page 77, we see that they're always 170 degrees apart because that's the way those two circles intersect. When it shows up in the chart, they're always opposites. They're extreme. Rahu and Ketu represent extreme. And when they conjunct a planet, they create an extremeness. When Ketu is conjunct Mars, it can show somebody who has extreme anger. There's not a healthy amount there. So this is Rahu and Ketu. A general understanding. So now, having introduced some basic general understanding of the planets, I'm going to skim over some important things that need to be understood. Planets have natural relationships. And if we look on page 80, we see a graph that shows how the planets feel about each other. If we see the first one, the sun is, and our next level graph is friendly to. So the sun is friendly to Mars, Moon, and Jupiter. Next line, we see that the sun is neutral to Mercury. And our last column, the sun is enemy to Venus and Saturn. If we look at the moon is friendly to Sun and Mercury, considers them friends. It's neutral to Mars, Jupiter, Venus, and Saturn. And the moon is enemy to none. A mother loves all her children. In the same way, if we go down, we can see all these planetary relationships. This becomes very important to understand how strong or weak a planet is. When the sun goes into a sign that's ruled by Mars, it's in the house of its friend. It's going to give very beneficial results. But we see that the sun is enemy to Saturn. So when the sun is placed in a sign ruled by Saturn, which is Capricorn or Aquarius, it's in an enemy sign. So it's not going to be giving as beneficial results. This is a chart that needs to be memorized and understood. The planetary relationships should be memorized. They should be something that you just know by heart. We have another level that goes even deeper than just friends and enemies and neutral. And that's called status, which is, I say, exultation and debilitation here. If we look on the chart on page 81, it shows how the sun is exalted in Aries. It's Nietzsche or fallen in Libra. If we look at the chart below, we can see that exalted means it's giving 100% of its good results. If it's Nietzsche or debilitated, it's giving 0% of its good results. We're not getting its beneficial aspects. When a planet is in its Mula Trikona sign, which is this row here, it means the planet has the ability to do what it's supposed to do. It's a very beneficial placement for the planet. And if we look in the chart, Mula Trikona shows it gives the planet's giving 75% of its effect. Good results. Then the planet, we have its own sign. When a planet's in its own sign, it's giving 50% of its own results. When it goes into the sign of a friend, it's only 25% of its own results. In a sign of a neutral, it's giving 12% of its results. And in an enemy sign, it's not giving its results. So in this way, we begin to judge the strength and status of a planet by seeing where it's placed. So one practice that you can do is take your chart and one or two others, and by hand, these days the computers calculate all this for you, but by them calculating it, you don't really understand it. Look at the chart and see, is the planet in a friendly sign or a neutral sign? Look and calculate the exaltation and the debilitation. Look through the charts and see how are the planets placed? What is their status? How much of results are they going to be giving? Two other concepts that need to be introduced. One is retrogression and one is combustion. Retrogression is when a planet seems to be going backwards in the sky based on the elliptical orbits of the planets. I'm not going too into depth into explaining the astronomical side. It's important to eventually research and learn. Important thing is that planets, when they're going direct, are acting like the sun and the moon. The sun and the moon never go retrograde. They're always direct. Rahu and Ketu are always retrograde, moving backwards. The 5 planets that represent the 5 elements, sometimes they're direct, and occasionally they are retrograde. When they're retrograde, they're acting like Rahu and Ketu. They're not doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing. in general, they're considered 3 times stronger. They're 3 times stronger because their desire increases. They have a strong desire to get the significations of that planet. So Jupiter represents children. If Jupiter is retrograde, it shows a strong desire for children. Venus shows relationship. If Venus is retrograde, it shows a strong desire for relationship. So it increases the desire and thereby the strength of that planet. At the same time, though, it can hurt some significations. Retrograde Jupiter, because Jupiter is the planet that significates contentment. Retrograde Jupiter can show some discontentment, a hard time being content. So, retrogression. Combustion. Combustion is when a planet becomes too close to the sun. Now the moon doesn't get combust. The moon becomes new. All the other planets are generally combust between 8 to 12 degrees within the range of the sun. Different texts give a few differences in degrees. Important part is when it comes close to the sun, it hurts the external significations. Yet it purifies the internal significations. Because the sun is that Atma that can purify everything and show the truth of everything. It might hurt that physical level aspect signification of the planet, but it purifies that internal level of the planet. Planet maturity. So each planet matures at a different time. And we have a list here on page 82. These are important to understand. I'm going to go, and there'll be a whole, in volume 2, there's going to be an entire chapter on planetary maturities, as well as, top of page 83, natural time periods of life. This is just a very general introduction here. Important to understand, but there'll be an entire chapter in full utilization of this coming. Bottom of page 83, we have planetary periods of time. So each planet also, it significates something. It also significates an amount of time. The sun significates the time period called an ayana, which is 6 months. Moon shows 48 minutes, or sometimes, according to Parashara, it's 48 minutes, which is called a muhurta. According to some texts, it shows a day. Mars shows a vara, which is a week. A vara is a day, 24 hours. Though some texts give Mars a week. Mercury represents a ritu. A ritu is a season. Jupiter represents a month. Venus represents 15 days or a fortnight. And Saturn represents a year. Now I go a little bit into why each of these planets represent these periods of time at the end of this section, but how we utilize this becomes very important. Somebody says, when will I get a new job? When we do a prashna chart, one of these planets is going to tell us when they're going to get the new job. If Moon is significating it, they're going to get it in a day or two. If Mars is significating when they're going to get the new job, it's going to be a few weeks. If Saturn is significating when they're going to get it, it can be about a year, because Saturn is showing a year. So we utilize these time periods again and again for predictive purposes. These time periods are very important for prediction. And as I said, I go in the book into why these time periods are connected to the planets. But we're going to move on and go to Gochara. Gochara, Go means cow, or it can mean cow, or it also is connected to globe, Gola. And Chara means to move. So it's the movement of the globes, or the cattle walking through the field. And that is what we call the transits in Vedic astrology. So on the page 84 is the general movement of each of the planets. We can see that the moon is in each sign for 2.5 days. That Mercury and Venus are in a sign for about a month. Sun is in a sign for exactly 1 month. Where Mars stays about 2 months in a sign. Jupiter is in one sign for an entire year. Now, when we start doing timing and we begin utilizing when things are going to happen in a person's life, they say, when am I going to get into a relationship? We want to see the transit of Jupiter and Venus in their chart. And when we see that it's in a position that's not bringing a relationship now, we want to know how soon is that planet going to move to the next sign or the 3 signs from there and actually give the person a relationship. So these are things that should be memorized so that we can utilize them for predictions. As you begin learning about the planets, you'll begin collecting lists and lists like this. And these are lists that need to be understood so that we can begin predicting and understanding the chart.
Pre-configures the incarnation.
Yes.
So the mind is the mind limited to one incarnation?
From the Vedic perspective, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. When the Atma, how can I say? The mind is that you have the physical body, which is the most gross level, and then you have the Atma, which is the most refined level of the individual being. And the mind is almost like a mediator between the two. So that Atma, when it leaves the body, it leaves and it's just the Vijnanamaya kosha. The Manamaya kosha is separate from it. And basically it goes into that by its karmic energies, it attracts itself to a situation that is going to give it the karma that it has earned. It goes down, and just before it goes into the body, it's found the situation that it incarnates into, it merges with the manas, and then it actually becomes a being, and then it merges into that semen and ovum.
Meanwhile?
Say again?
Where is the manas been?
The manas is created based upon the karmas. And that the karmas of that manas and the Atma are creating what that body looks like when it's in the womb. That's why you get these situations where a woman, when she gets pregnant, will start to have thoughts that she doesn't normally have. She'll start to have cravings for food that aren't normal. Because that karma, the manas of the child, is interacting with her manas, wanting what it wants. So there is an actual manas there. And from the Vedic perspective, as soon as the seed and sperm, the sperm and ovum come together, the Atma is initiated in there. Mm-hmm. Without an Atma entering at that moment, it won't grow. The matter alone doesn't make it grow. Mm-hmm. There has to be an Atma that's guiding that development. Mm-hmm. And in that way, there's a technique called the saptamsha, where we look at the children. And in that, you can see there's different houses for first child, second child, third child. If somebody had one abortion, you have to skip that first. You can see that the first child was aborted and go to the second one. If one is lost, you can see it. And I'm not saying that I'm not supporting or not supporting abortion. But bottom line is, there is an Atma that is being removed. And it's indicated in the chart. Does that answer?
Yeah.
Yeah. So our last section of the planet chapter is on karakas, straight karakas. We have 3 different types of karakas. Just like there's rajas, tamas, and sattva, we have 3 karakas connected to the rajas, tamas, and sattva. Now, rajas is connected to Brahma. Brahma is the creator god. Tamas is connected to Shiva. He's the destroyer god. And Sattva is connected to Vishnu. He's the sustaining god, or the sustaining energy. Whether you want to look at these as deities from a Hindu perspective, or if you want to just look at these as archetypal energies from a little bit more universalist perspective. And we see in this chart that of those three karakas, Brahma is connected to the Nisargika karakas. And what we have been focusing on is Nisargika karakas. What is just the natural signification of the planets? Where moon is connected to salt, sun is connected to black pepper. Black pepper is hot and burns and creates fire in you. Where salt makes you hold water and puts on weight. Natural basic significations. Brahma created the universe as it is. And so that's Nisargika significations. We have another type called Chara karakas, which are connected to the Sattva. And the Chara karakas are based on the degrees of the planets. The highest degree planet is the Atma karaka. We have a chart on page 87. The second highest degree planet is the Amatya karaka. The third highest degree planet is the Bhatrakaraka. Now, if you use Chehora software, you'll see that next to the planet, in the basics information, you'll see the letters AK for Atmakaraka. You'll see AMK for Amatyakaraka. You'll see BK for Bhatrakaraka. MK for the fourth highest degree planet, which is Matrakaraka. And then we have PIK for the fourth highest degree planet, or the fifth highest degree planet, which is Pitrakaraka. Now, what this is representing is, as Atmakaraka shows, Atma means soul. It's that which significates the soul. So the Charakaraka, being at the level of Sattva, is showing what that inner nature is. So the Atmakaraka shows what your inner soul is like, what your inner soul is desiring, what the inner soul desires are. At the same time, it'll show what the mother's inner soul nature is, the father's inner soul nature. It shows how you at a soul level are connected to the other people in your life at a soul level. Your mother, you might be very friendly with her on a social level, but at a soul level, you guys just don't get along. Or you might not get along at a social level, but have a deep soul connection. The difference between this, that general relationship with Nisargakaraka moon, just shows the general signification, external reality of the mother. Where the Matrakaraka in your chart is going to show the nature of the mother. And the relationship of that planet to the Atmakaraka planet is going to show your mother and your own souls, how you're connecting and relating. We'll go deeper into this, but it's an important concept to understand that there's these different types of significations. So even though the moon is representing the mother, maybe the fourth highest degree planet ends up being Saturn. So it shows that the mother's soul is connected to Saturn, meaning that she has a very tough outlook on life, and she believes that life is based on suffering. And so she approaches life in this way. Or she could have a Venus Atmakaraka, meaning that life is about, enjoying. It's the pleasure of life, and we should make sure we appreciate the beautiful things that we experience. So that planet that's significating the soul of the person is showing some of their deep inner inherent qualities and the deep important things that make them happy. That is the Charakarakas, and they're very important. And as we progress, we'll use them much more in depth. Most important is to first understand the Nisargika Karakas, then to begin to understand the Charakarakas. And then the third type of Karaka is connected to the Tamas. They're called Stira Karakas. And they, we can see on page 88, the Stira Karakas. they are directly connected to health and longevity. And they are used in Ayu Jyotish. So in predictive astrology, we're using Nasargika Karakas and Charakaras. When we get into looking at the health of somebody and calculating their longevity, we have to use Sthirikarakas. And they slightly change. In the Sthirikarakas, you can see that father is represented by the stronger of the sun or Venus. Not just the sun. You calculate which is stronger. And then you look at the dashas that are causing ill health to that planet that is stronger, and that will show the health of the father. In the same way, the mother is the stronger of the moon or Mars. Saturn shows the children and the health of the children. So Sthirikarakas are primarily used for health significations. They're tamas. And tamas, on a mental level, it has a negative connotation. But tamas, it's not all negative. Tamas shows physicality. What is the physical reality? That which has become physical. So the tamas karakas are showing what we're utilizing on the physical realm, its health or its lack of health. So these are the three type of karakas of the planets. Now, as a homework, as research, if you really want to progress, create that notebook that has each of the planets listed and begin noting the different significations and collecting them. And you'll gather a small amount now, but if you take a serious study to Vedic astrology, over the years, that will increase and increase and increase into books. It could get to the level, if somebody really wanted to, it could get encyclopedia level of significations. Important part is to keep a record and to really be aware and to study and to think and to look at reality and to begin to think, to look at a tree and to say, which planet is significating this tree? Understanding the energy of the planets so we can look at anything and know what planet is significating it. I once had a very high-level computer programmer studying Vedic astrology with me. And he had a very hard time with the fact that there wasn't just, that I couldn't sit there and give him a list of all the significations. That he couldn't just memorize some list and that's it. It's much deeper. We have to understand the vibration of these planets. And we understand the vibration by meditating on these planets, by thinking about them, by looking around the environment and really focusing and understanding on them. That deep, constant thought and awareness begins to awaken our understanding and connection to the planets. So that's the end of Chapter 3.